the finish line of this nation's oldest and most prestigious marathon. Hi again, everybody. I'm Jim Kelly, and welcome to the corner of Boylston and Exeter Street, right behind us. Historic Boston and the finish line of the nation's most prestigious marathon, the Boston Marathon. The weather, well, it is raw, it is rainy, it is blustery, but the old New England adage is stick around for just a minute, and we'll see if that weather won't change for you just a little bit. There are the conditions as you're looking live right now. And one of our expert analysts alongside is Dr. Paul Thompson, who's a cardiologist from Brown University. The 91st running of the Boston Marathon is plot their running plans because of the weatherman. Today we've got raw and rainy conditions, but we could well be on world record time when this 91st running of the Boston Marathon gets underway. It starts, of course, as we have pointed out, some 26 miles away and weaves through some quiet New England towns like Natick and Framingham and Wellesley. How does that course go? Well, let's check in with the 1982 Boston Marathon champion, Alberto Salazar.
This is where it all begins, in Hopkinton, just 50 yards from the First Congregational Church at the new starting line. The Boston Marathon course is 26 miles, 385 yards. It's a point-to-point course, which can be an advantage. Usually the wind here in Boston is at your back, but one never knows what Mother Nature has in store for the runners on the day of the race. In 1982, when I won, we had the wind in our face the whole way. The other thing that's important about the Boston course is that there's a net loss in elevation. Here at the starting line, we're 470 feet above sea level. At the finish line, we'll only be 12 feet above sea level. Once we cross this line, we'll never be this high in elevation again.
We talk about the rigors of running over 26 miles. How about in a wheelchair?
Yeah, it's really tough on a cold day like this for the wheelchair racers, because when they go down the hills, they really lose a lot of heat. They really cool down quickly.
You can see, George, the tension is no different on the faces of the wheelchair competitors than on the runners who will begin after.
Yeah, these are great athletes now, and we're going to see some people getting in here in nicely under 2 hours, and that is flying at 15 miles an hour.
Bob and Larry are standing by for the start of the wheelchair competition.
Thank you, Jim. You see the wheelchair runners lined up, and they are off. And this is very much a race worthy of the attention of the press, Larry. These are tremendous athletes, and the time should be spectacular under these conditions.
Bob, Andre Vigier's time and winning and setting a new world best on this course last year, he averaged under 4 minutes per mile for 26 miles in a wheelchair. There you see going down. They will not like this wet surface. If it's drizzly out, it will slow the times because the athletes will not be able to get a good firm grip as they turn their wheels. They use the phrase in wheelchair racing, running. There's 53 men competitors that would do the toe the mark today, and 6 women. Among the favorites, Jim Knopp, 31 years of age, from Long Beach, California, a man who's a part-time actor. And you've maybe seen him in series on Love Boat and Happy Days out in California. Also, Andre Vigier from Quebec is another co-favorite. He is in the race. Look at them try and move around. Look, we got an accident on the wheelchair. Several guys are down. It's the first time I've ever seen a match. Oh, look at this.
Oh, this is awful.
Look at this.
The footing, as you said, goes downhill as the runners leave Hopkinton. You saw the wheelchair athletes with their hands up. They are basically braking at that point, reaching speeds of 40 miles an hour and greater. Fortunately, many of them, as you see, are wearing helmets, bicycle helmets, much like riders use. But the state police are in the road, and it looks like they're going to need some medical attention down there at the very start.
Bob, these race cars are made of titanium. They used to weigh 50 pounds. They now are as light as 12 pounds. And as you say, you literally fall out of the hill at Hopkinton.
International field. That race may be delayed just a little bit. For a look at the field, here is Larry Rawson. Well, if you ask any of the so-called experts about this Boston Marathon, you get the word that it's an international field. The winner may come from John Tracy of Ireland, and it may, of course, be the man from Japan, Seko. But there's the marathon record, the defending champion from Australia, Rob DiCostella, and the mark of 207.51 last year, George Hurst, and the women's record, Joni Benoit, set back in 1983. But athletes, as they have the scene live, anticipating the start. There is 4-time Boston Marathon champion Bill Rogers on the right, and there is the George Blanda, if you will, of marathons, Johnny Kelly, on the left side of the screen. And of course, we've got lots of women here too, as Larry Rawson explains.
The
The women's race is led by a truly outstanding marathoner, Portugal's Rosa Mota. In women's marathoning, there are 4 who stand above all others: Greta Weitz, Joan Benoit Samuelson, Ingrid Christensen, and Rosa Mota. The bronze medalist in the marathon at the 1984 Olympic Games says she is here to run a hard race. Lisa Weidenbach, the 4th place finisher in our 1984 U.S. Olympic Marathon trials, is back to run Boston. In the 1985 race, she broke it open early and cruised to an easy victory. The 1980 Boston Marathon winner, Canadian Jacqueline Garreau, joins an elite women's field for this race. Recovering from surgery 6 months ago, Garreau hopes to come close to her personal best of 2 hours, 29 minutes.
Dr. Paul Thompson, Joni Benoit was okay to run as far as the obstetricians were concerned, but she's got a problem with the right leg that just doesn't seem to be healing the right way.
There are really 2 interesting issues with Joni. One is the fact that she is pregnant, and the other is the fact that she has this leg injury. You could maybe inject that leg injury or give her some anti-inflammatory agents, anti-inflammatory drugs, but because she's pregnant, you want to back away from anything like that. I think that's probably why she's not running today. She doesn't want to take any chances.
When victory has already been declared on Rosa Mota from Portugal.
Those women are just as tough as the men. They're not going to concede anything to Rosa Mota, I don't think. I think you'll see a good women's race.
Well, they're lining into the starting gate, if you will, to use a horse racing analogy. And George Hurst, as always happens in some things you take for granted, the seeded athletes, the seeded runners are in the front of the pack.
Yeah, it's true, and I can see a couple of the people we've been talking about here, Jim. There was Rosa Mota. There's Rob DiCastella in the blue and white shirt. You can see the way they're crowding and pushing at that line. There's a lot of tension there now.
The favorites, of course, are up front, as we have pointed out, the seeded runners. There is the defending champion, number 1, the Australian Rob DiCastella. Let's go back out to Hopkinton in the start, and here's Alan Massengale.
We are just seconds away from the start of the Boston Marathon. The elite runners gathered in front. It will take 9 minutes for the entire pack to pass us here. They did a good job of clearing the course when the wheelchair accident occurred. There have been no delays, so we are ready for the 91st running of the Boston Marathon.
Well,
now we go to Bob and Larry at Copley Square.
Thank you, Jim. You can watch the runners line up there. These are the most nervous moments in the life of any marathoner. Boston is probably the key to most of the folks behind that front rank of the world's best marathoners. And there you see they're on their way. A quick start, and we've got a fall right at the start. And I believe that might have been Rob DiCastella, Larry.
I absolutely think you're right, and it was a good roll that he did there. And if you noticed, a couple of other people gave him berth to get back up to his feet. I think he'll be fine. I wonder what happened. Is it the surface that seems essentially slick out there all the way down that hill?
I think they were very closely packed together there, as they do on these very narrow 2-lane streets in Hopkinton. I think he may have just had a heel clip. The important thing for Rob DiCastella now is to gather himself up, get back into his race pace, and just shuck it off and get his marathon started.
It was Rob DiCastella that fell, and it was a good artificial. There's Juma Ikonga at the bottom of the screen that you see. Everybody else appears to be away cleanly here. The conditions, in many ways, we can't call them ideal, but they're good. The forecast for other parts of the country is much warmer weather here in the east, and the lingering effects of the storm may help everybody here to get a reasonably good time, Bob.
Now we'll take a step back, and we've seen the world-class runners. In fact, you see their backs now as they make their way off out of Hopkinton on their 26-mile, 385-yard trek to downtown Boston, where we all await them. But these folks you're looking at right now are the people DiCastella. There you see him on the left. Looks like he got hacked right at the start.
It looks like a policeman or one of the starters was actually in the way, right in the center of the screen. You can see a couple of yellow jackets, a couple of policemen there as Rob goes down. And you can see the frustration on his face, George, as he rolled over and got back up.
It's true. He popped back up within just a few seconds, but my concern, Jim, is that it's a shock to your system. You've been waiting. You've got a game plan. You've been looking to this race for a long time, and then something goes wrong. Luckily, DiCastella is a very experienced runner. I think he's going to try to regain his composure, but it's not...
People that make this race, those folks right there, but maybe we tip our hats to all the training that they put in over the months to try and run a respectable marathon, and to maybe their spouses, too, who put up with their avocation in such a serious way for 6 or 9 months that they might meet their own critical goals that they chose to succeed in.
Well, all of the experts have said that this is perhaps the best marathon field ever assembled, including the Olympics. They think it's slightly awesome. We'll be back with the 91st Boston Marathon.
Reports we had him back around 4th place and moving quickly up towards the lead group. So he wasn't out of the race long, but there you see the lead pack. While we have them on camera, they do, Bob, like to run as a pack. They will draft off each other, particularly on flat stretches. They will caution each other to watch out for potholes, and they will
marathon as well. Rob DiCostella fell at the start. John Tracy of Ireland is one of the favorites, and he's only won 1 marathon before. It's in the peaceful New England town of Warwick, Rhode Island, that the John Tracy family lives. The former native of Waterford County, Ireland, moved back with a purpose. John simply wants to run well again.
I decided, well, I wanted to go back to America because that's where I ran well before. So when I arrived in after Helsinki, my wife had rented out the house and sold the 2 cars. So we were on our way back. So almost the minute I came back, I started running well again. And I decided around April of '84 that I want to run the marathon in LA.
No one expected John Tracy to win the silver medal in Los Angeles back in the '84 Olympics. In fact, no one even expected the Ireland native to even be a contender. But contend he did, and he captured a silver medal in the process. But now it's been 3 long years since John Tracy's huge upset, and 3 long years since his last marathon effort. So why would the Providence College graduate return now, and why would he compete in this year's Boston Marathon?
Because I live in Rhode Island, and Boston Marathon is actually my local marathon. And because I'm known around New England, this is the one I wanted to do. That's one reason. The second reason is because of the tradition of Boston. There's no question about it. Boston has a mystique to it. And it's a great race, and I really love to win it. And the third reason, it's going to be a great field, and I'm really happy that I'm in it.
And what a field he faces. 10 competitors in this year's Boston Marathon have broken 2 hours and 10 minutes, the benchmark for excellence.
I think you need to stay in contention, no question about it. But I think the first thing you got to be aware of is not to go too hard in the first 5 miles. I don't know right now. You know, Jones has a reputation of going out hard. So is Ikanga, and so is Jeff Smith. So I think you've got to make up your mind how far you're going to let them go ahead if they go out really hard. Because I certainly don't want to go out too hard over the first 5 or 6 miles. And I think after that I would like to be catching up by around 10 miles. And then, you know, I think at 15, 16 miles you'll be deciding what you want to do in the race and seeing who's looking good. But I think this year there's not going to be anyone that's going to run away from the field like DiCostella did last year. Because of the depth, I think it's going to be a race almost to the wire. To be one of the winners like Bill Rogers, Jeff Smith, and all the great guys down through the years, it would be a great achievement and a great trail. And I think particularly this year because the field is so strong. You know, I think at the end of the year people will say Boston was the best race of the year, and people would say, well, that guy was #1 at the end of the year.
That is John Tracy from nearby Warwick, Rhode Island, as the field, the elite international field, approaches Ashland now. And we are, of course, waiting for the helicopters to get airborne. One of the problems caused by the fog, everybody has been socked in, so we're hoping that the fog will lift and that the helicopters will be able to bring you some airborne pictures as the race continues to develop. You know, seeing that piece with John Tracy out of Warwick, Rhode Island, and his native Ireland, he has his own cardiologist, Dr. Dario Herrera. And Dr. Herrera says of John Tracy, he's in better shape now than he was back in '84. Well, we have our cardiologist, Dr. Paul Thompson, alongside. And in talking to John and his cardiologist, they leave nothing.
From Ashland into Framingham. The last 5 miles have been through the Ashland and Hopkinton countryside. The last 5 miles are important because they've been almost all downhill. The runners have been running at a pace much faster than they'll be able to handle the rest of the way. The experienced runners will realize this and will start to slow down at this point. The inexperienced runners will start to surge into the lead. In 1982, I was in 20th or 30th place at this point, but I didn't worry about those runners in front of me because I knew that they'd have to slow down. The next 10 miles are flat, so the smart runner will try and conserve his energy and settle into a nice, even pace.
We're now in Framingham watching the lead runners in the wheelchair, in Natick that is, excuse me, as we switch pictures from runners to wheelchairs and back, watching the leaders. Apparently George Murray still out front, but he had some competition, as you can see, as they made their way through Natick, some 7 and 8 miles into this.
Meanwhile, back at Framingham, the men's competition, and at last report, it was Gray, Seko, and Ikanga.
Something significant to watch for here now. Charlie Gray was said to be well out in front of the pack, and as you can see, a runner between the vehicles in a light-colored jersey. It would appear that Charlie Gray is still right out in front with a tight pack behind him. But Larry Rawson, the thing that we noticed as compared to our earlier shot was that there the men were spread all the way across the road, curb to curb in a regular chorus line. Now we see that we're starting to get a tactical bunching. Yuma Ikanga, the dark runner in the very front, is evidently leading that pack right now.
I can tell from just looking at their leg turnover, this is still the same slow pace that it's been for the first 3 and 4 miles since we saw them last in Ashland. You can also tell by the numbers of runners who are up in the lead pack. I think I actually see Bill Rogers, if you look in your screen, back far right, looking over his shoulder. Look at the man on the far right-hand side of the screen, just to keep track of the legendary Gordie Howe of running. That is Bill Rogers. Up in the lead group, you have all the favorites. In the middle, Juma Ikanga. Off to the left, Steve Jones.
And Steve Jones, the airplane mechanic, a corporal in the Royal Air Force, wearing the striped shorts on the left. Yuma Ikanga, the very short runner, right in the middle of your screen. And wouldn't it be wonderful for Billy Rogers, Larry, to be up in the middle of this pack? This sort of pace will play right to his talents. Off to the right in the white, running behind the black runner in front, you see Toshihiko Seko. But at this point, your leader way out in front is Charlie Gray out of Missouri.
Gray finished first in the Portland Marathon in 2 hours, 16 minutes. But again, he's sailing along at what is an easy pace. This is going to be a fascinating second half marathon as they try and tear through the Newton Hills. I think you'll see a lot of surging, a lot of testing going on because these athletes are not experiencing any kind of oxygen debt. And this isn't, I can't emphasize how easy this pace is as we look at approximately 15 runners in the lead group. There's Dean Costello in the middle wearing number 1. Eddie Eyestone off to his right, and the Jeff Smith in the black shorts and the white singlet top. They're all up there, aren't they, Bob?
Very much a tactical battle at this point, but Ikanga is leading the way. He is a front runner.
Number 5 there, John Tracy, as you see him begin to disappear into the fog. By the way, 1979's New York Marathon experienced the same problems. It's endemic to marathoning when the ceiling drops to 400 feet.
Number 6, Kita of Japan, is off to his right. Number 17 is Richard Umberg of Switzerland, the only marathoner in this group to have recorded a fairly quick international race earlier this year. In February, he ran 2 hours and 16 minutes. Well, the action is starting to get thick here at Boston. We'll have more ESPN coverage of the 91st Boston Marathon coming up. Charlie Gray is your leader. "35 minutes and 30 seconds unofficially into the Boston Marathon, and you're watching as the tail end of the men's field makes its way through Framingham. 6.7 miles. Kind of an odd mile post if you're used to seeing the more round 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mile marks. But that's the way things are done in the Boston Marathon.
Interesting story. Back in 1897, when they wanted to run the marathon, the roads in those days were really just dirt. So they figured out an easy way for the officials to do it, since there weren't many automobiles. They took the train and they headed west. And they went out to the town of Ashland, and 24.7 miles later, they finished in downtown Boston. There you see one of the female runners. If we can get her number there.
It looks like Van Landingham, the Belgian Ria Van Landingham, you see making her way along with a convoy of men around her.
At the 3-mile mark, Ria, and that's your right number, F6, she was running at a pace of 16 minutes and 20 seconds through 3 miles and was in second place, Bob.
The women keeping up a good battle here, and it is different for the women racing an event like Boston. With men around them constantly, it's very difficult for these women to keep tabs on where their competitors are.
We talk about the structure of this race and the tradition. Well, the reason it is, there you see on the right.
Talk to us about that problem. Ed Eyestone, a Mormon, married Miss Utah of the class of 1983, the former Miss Lynn Lambert, named by Runner's World magazine, George Hirsch, as the top American male runner of 1986. Was that a weak field?
Well, yeah, there are some ways that you can beat the drug testing. One of them is by using some of the oral testosterone compounds rather than the injectable.
The Natick checkpoint, 10.4 miles, and our elapsed time at the bottom right-hand side of the screen as the wheelchair competitors are coming through. Meanwhile, the men are right behind, approaching mark number 9. It's still Gray, Seko, Jones now into the 3rd spot, and Ikunga.
Again, I can look at leg speed, Jim, and I can see things have not picked up much. They're still perambulating along at a very comfortable pace. They've been averaging so far in the race 5 minutes and 2 seconds. That translates to a 2-hour, 12-minute marathon. There's a lot of tactics going on in the pack right now, Bob. Would you agree?
You saw the action in the front as over on the left of your screen there in the white jersey and the striped shorts. That is Steve Jones, and all of those front runners are, their heads are virtually on hinges. They're all looking around at Conga over on the right, Jones in the middle, and on the left is Jeff Smith.
Let me bring up a point. You notice everybody is now starting to funnel to the center of the road. That's the high point of the road. It's the better place to run, number 1. Number 2, it is my guess that they are beginning to feel some of the effects of a headwind. Not only in a slow pace, people are more happy to be bunched up around each other, almost like a cylindrical basketball. But now they're stretching out a little bit without the pace picking up measurably. So I think they're running into a bit of a headwind, although I don't think it's strong. And we're seeing here, I think, a lot of tactics. They're monitoring each other's breathing. They're looking for signs of some weakness. They're trying to decide when is the right time to step on the accelerator and try and crush some of the opposition that's up in the lead pack.
Larry and Bob and George, what does this slow pace mean for, say, a Bill Rogers and especially for a John Tracy?
Well, I would venture to say it means that they have a shot. Now, in Bill Rogers' case, perhaps not as good a shot as in the case of John Tracy. And in fact, as we look at a pack, there is Bill Rogers in the dark shorts and the white shirt with the horizontal stripe. Second runner from the right. There is Bill looking around, chatting with someone. Obviously, Bill Rogers is not a part of this race. Oh, he was chatting at the wheelchair. I think he probably had a problem with that wheelchair being smack in the middle of the road, Larry.
No, I honestly think he knows that guy. I've seen him push the wheelchair before in this. I'm just guessing on that, but I think he probably passed words of encouragement to that person. And Rogers said he would be running a conservative race. He snuck up on everybody last year, ran 2 hours, 13 minutes, 36 seconds at the age of 38, and nailed down 4th place in this race. I will add this. I think you're exactly right about Rogers. You know, he's past his prime of a great speed runner. But certainly for Tracy, it gives him a shot, I think, maybe even a better shot that the pace was slow in the beginning to get 1st, 2nd, or 3rd in this race. I pick him for 2nd.
Well, somebody asked Bill Rogers to assess his chances of matching his fine 4th place finish last year, and the 39-year-old said, well, if I did, you'd know I was either blood doped or on steroids, and I don't do either. The Boston Marathon just about past the 9-minute mark. We'll all be back in a moment. And welcome back on this raw and rainy New England day for the 91st running of the Boston Marathon. The applause picking up all along the race course. They're standing 8 and 10 deep for most of this 26-mile course, and that is the history and the tradition. The crowds at one point, when they come around Coolidge Corner, actually get so close you can reach out and actually touch the competitors. And so many people compete, over 6,700, because of the tradition and the history here in Boston. They're still coming through Framingham, which is, of course, way back in the pack. Well, George Hirsch, the women have gone through Natick, and there she is, 28 years young, out of Portugal.
That's 99 pounds, and she's just cruising. I'd say she's running very, very within herself. I just got her 10-mile split. It's 54 minutes and 58 seconds. That's 5 minutes and 30 seconds a mile. It's not record pace, Jim, but it's running at a very respectable rate of 224 to 225. So Rosa looks comfortable and in control.
And again, gentlemen, and Larry and Bob, you might notice that the top 4, as far as the women are concerned, look a lot like the top 4 in the men's division right now. It's a very elite international field. So we might draw on Larry and George's expertise here to talk about
important points. This is Bob. There are the Rita Van Landingham was running very close in second place to Rosa Mota. So there's a tremendous battle building there as we watch the men making their way through Wellesley, where the girls of Wellesley College will cheer them on. That 5:29 pace for Rosa Mota is right on her personal best. So she is going as fast as she has ever gone before.
Jean-Francois Poitien for France leads the wheelchair. We've already talked about the women. Let me tell you, folks, if you're watching at home, the race has begun. Just watching the leg turnover, things have finally picked up. They have passed the half marathon time. It's still a cast of thousands in the lead group, but that human convoy at the front is going to start getting dismembered very soon.
And Larry, they're not running 2 or 3 abreast anymore. You saw that they had stretched wide. Somebody is about to make a break, and nobody wants to be left behind.
Right you are. 13.4 miles they were approaching that you saw the time. There's the 12-mile time. Forget who's being shown in the lead group. There's still about 14 or 12 other people other than those on the screen up there at the half point. This is going to be a barn burner of a second half marathon. They'll reach the low point of the race at about 90 feet
of the marathon. 13.1 miles gone, 13.1 miles to go. The runners have just passed Wellesley College a half mile ago. There they went through the beautiful girls that lined that part of the course. They were always an inspiration to me. Normally, when runners reach the halfway point, they'll just take their time there and double it to get their approximate time at the finish. But here at Boston, you've got to come by even faster. For any runners to have any ideas about a course record, they better come by here in close to 1 hour and 3 minutes in order to have a chance at the course record.
Well, thank you, Alberto Salazar. But, Larry, I have a feeling they didn't come anywhere near to 1:03.
No, they didn't. You're right, Bob. You run this thing 4 times. You've got a feel for it. I certainly trained a lot in this course. And this is one where you've got to be probably, if you hope to win it, we're talking world-class time now, you better be 2 to 3 minutes faster in the first half than you will be in the second half to have a good time and a chance to win. And we may see reverse splits on this course, which would be, for a winner, probably maybe a first or second time it's happened in the last 15 years. We're right now with our cameras right now just outside of Wellesley College itself, and that's what Johnny Kelly was saying, the best place in the race to be. I'll tell you, the women have breeding in class, and they go crazy.
I can tell you. 5:49, the halfway time that compares to Roberto Di Castella's 1986 split of 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 6 seconds. Larry Rawson.
There you see the leaders. Everybody's up there, Bob. We haven't lost anybody. Forget the top 5, but at least just nice to know where they are. All their friends and relatives can see that they're still in the top 5, but the rest of the guys are there. Toshihiko Seko. That man will not take the lead until he starts to push. He'll sit back and study everybody else in the lead pack.
Mile point 17. The runners are going to take their first sharp turn of the course here. Once they go around this turn, they're going to hit the first of a series of undulating hills, commonly known as Heartbreak Hill. The runners are going to try and conserve as much energy as possible as they go up these hills, hoping that once they get to the top, they're going to have enough left to go down that hill as hard as possible. When I ran here in 1982, I hit this point a stride behind Dick Beardsley. I knew in my mind that I just had to stick with him on these hills. It would be the toughest part of the course. But if I was with him at the top, I felt that I would have a very good chance of winning.
ESPN recaps today's 91st running of the Boston Marathon. Find out what it's like to conquer one of the greatest challenges in sports. Tonight at 11 Eastern, only on ESPN.
We are at Heartbreak Hill, but beer really doesn't get you back out the way other foods would.
There's Toshihiko Seko making his move, and we are right now well into the Newton Hills. It looks to me like we're approaching Newton City Hall, I think. But that is Toshihiko Seko showing his heels to the rest of the world. There you see Jeff Smith.
Jeff Smith running in second place. Steve Jones is third, and a fella from my hometown, Ariga Abraha, leading that pack of 2 more runners.
They have not reached the top of Heartbreak Hill. There you see some of the other wheelchair people. Newton City Hall is about a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile before the base of Heartbreak Hill. So they'll be there in about another 3 to 4 minutes. There you see them. They have just passed Boston College's women's division and the past Newton College of the Sacred Heart. That is the beginning of the base of Heartbreak Hill that you're seeing there. That's the lead pack of athletes.
And challenging for 5th position, I think I see the singlet of John Tracy's. Very much a hometown favorite. Even even though he comes from Ireland. He lives in this part of the country. Boston, of course, predominantly an Irish city, and you can bet that there's a strong crowd contingent that would love to see John Tracy overhaul Toshihiko Seko.
Bob, we have a report that Bruce Bickford was up among the top 7 about a half mile ago. We'll have to wait and see where everybody is. Right now, it looks like these guys.
The top 3, Toshihiko Seko.
At the very top of Heartbreak Hill. Look at Seko turn around. He's got control of the race, he feels, but he wants to see where everybody is. He trained in southern part of Japan and the island of Okinawa, doing his usual solitude of long runs. He's done it before, frequently going to New Zealand and the winters of Japan so that he could prepare for major marathons. And he knows now that he's got control of this race. There's the pack, Bobby.
There is a pack you see of 4 or 5 runners. Jeff Smith among them. Ariga Abraha from Ethiopia and Atlanta, Georgia. I still see John Tracy in that group, but Bruce Bickford is there as well. Getting back to Seko for a moment, talk about the embodiment of the samurai warrior. After he lost to Bill Rogers in this race in 1979, Toshihiko Seko took off an entire year, did nothing but train. Came back a couple of years later and won.
Nike singlet on the right of your screen is Dave Gordon that you see there among the top runners.
Making their way over the top of the hill. 6 miles still to come.
Larry and Bob and George, one thing we should talk about when we're addressing Heartbreak Hill, it's not just one hill. You just don't go up and then down. It's a series of hills.
There you see Juma Ikanga in your group right there that just went by. Gentlemen, I'm sorry to interject. I just wanted to point him out while we had a second.
I think there's really about 3 hills. It's kind of a rolling stage in there, and it's deceptive. Some people think Heartbreak Hill is an awful big deal. Joni Benoit, when she first ran this race in 1979, turned to someone she was running with late in the race and said, "When are the hills coming?" And they said back to her, "You've already been through them." So that's a little bit what Heartbreak Hill can be.
Guys, well, gentlemen, if you could only hear us now, it is downhill from here. People sometimes say that to you when you've had a bad week. But
that's what they want you to believe. There is your leader, Toshihiko Seko. You saw water flying from the side of the road as the passers-by here at Boston, the spectators, try to keep runners cool. I don't think it's a problem for this guy right now. We are 1 hour, 48 minutes, 52 seconds into the race. And just look at the concentration in the face of Toshihiko Seko.
30 years of age, 5'7", 130 pounds. He possesses the raw speed to carry a marathon if it's slow. We mentioned that up at the top of the show, that this played into the hands of guys with great speed. Tracy is still up in the lead group. Bickford did fade from sight. De Castella's had problems. If you've just joined us, he is not back among the pack that's chasing this man. Juma Ikanga seemingly not having a good day either. It is Seko. It is Tracy behind him, but it is Seko who controls this whole show right now.
And it'll be interesting to watch, Larry, to see if now that he has the lead, that he is out in front. It has not been a tremendously tiring race, I would guess, for Seko to this point. Let's see how hard he wants to push it. Is he just running to win, or is he running against the clock, hoping to prove something here at Boston?
He is a man that remembers what's happened to him in the past. In 1979, he lost on the Newton Hills to Bill Rogers. Rogers ran 2:09.27. Seko was less than 45 seconds behind. He went back and trained, and in 1981 came back and broke Bill Rogers' record on a warm day, did it by 1 second. He's coming back to pay some debts to the guys in the Olympics that he lost out to.
There probably won't be a record, but there will be a great finish at Boston. Stay with us. Thousands of fans eagerly await the arrival of the winner. And this man right now appears to have the inside track for that title. Toshihiko Seko of Japan is now a full 25 seconds up on Jeff Smith, followed by Steve Jones.
Bobby is less than 3 miles from the finish line as he closes in. Jeff Smith and Steve Jones are running right behind Seko. When I say right behind, I'm talking of about 150 yards astern of that man. I started to tell you about how disciplined this guy is. At the Olympics, he was known to go away and train up to 150 miles a day, I was going to say, a week.
Too much.
But under the guidance of his former coach, Kyushi Namamura, he has dedicated his life to running. He was a student at Waseda University in southern Japan, and he trained and dedicated his life not only to his studies, but to training hard. In the evenings, he lived with his coach, and the coach would read from scripture about warrior-like attitudes, and he trained his mind as well as his body to perform to world-class levels. He was a great high school runner and kept improving. He has had injury problems in 1981 and 82, leg and knee, which kept him from being a world-class competitor. But he came back in time for the marathon, and many people feel that he was stale when he actually hit the race. He ran 2:14 and finished only 14th in the marathon at that distance. That's the only bad race this man has ever had in the last 8 years at this distance. Very hard to run successfully well at a world-class level that long, Bob.
And keep in mind the pressure on this man. There is a Japanese television crew here. There are Japanese still photographers and writers. They are there to follow the progress of this one man. During that injury stint that Larry told you about, as you see him looking back over his shoulder, Toshihiko Seko became known in Japan as the Department of Injury. Those are the kinds of pressures and those are the kinds of expectations on this spiritual descendant of the Japanese samurai.
Bob and Larry, I've got Toshihiko Seko between 19 and 21, lowering the pace to a 4:49 mile, and then between 21 and 22, he threw in a 4:41. Of course, that's the downhill after Heartbreak Hill. So this is really what he intended to do, I'm sure, all the way, is to start flying from here to the end of this race. He sure looks strong and under control.
George, I think we all felt somebody would break it open, but you're right, we didn't know whether it would be Seko. I'm frankly a little surprised that he chose to break it open first. I thought it might be a Conger if he had something left, somebody with a little less speed, because Seko, I think, could have waited even later in the race and run even faster. He is that quick and possesses great 10,000 meter speed. He's run 27:45 for 10,000 meters on the track, and he's run, if you're familiar with 5,000 meters out there, you runners or joggers, he's run that in 13 minutes and 24 seconds. That's like 4 minutes and 15 seconds per mile for 3 miles.
Larry, you talked about his inspirational coach, whose memory he's run in. I think his inspiration right now is his 7-month-old son, and his name is Subaru.
Gee, and he doesn't even run for them either.
I was going to say, they've got all the endorsements covered, don't they?
Well, keep in mind that we have seen him look back, and he has broken away earlier than we expected. Can all possibly be well with Toshihiko Seko? Perhaps not, as his mouth begins to open, his breathing a little bit labored. Perhaps Toshihiko Seko is not quite as secure as we think. But we are still one Nike checkpoint away from the finish of the 91st Boston Marathon. Let's hear again from Alberto Salazar.
We're at Nike checkpoint number 4 in Cleveland Circle, just past the 22-mile point. The runners are coming off of Heartbreak Hill. On an ordinary day here in Boston, this is a very busy intersection. But here today on race day, there'll only be 2 or 3 runners left at the most in contention. At this point, nobody wants to be broken. If anybody breaks away, there's a good chance he's going to go on to win the race. So here, runners are going to draw upon the strategy and tactics they've learned over years of running. A great kicker is going to try and just stay with the leaders until the last 100 to 200 yards and then start his last finishing kick. A strength runner is going to have to try and draw the finishing kick out of the others by starting with a mile or 2 to go. At this point in the race, you've got to try and make your last move. It's getting right down to the finish.
Well, there is one other factor to contend with as we watch Toshihiko Seko continue to lead the race. There is another big net drop in elevation between here and the finish. And Dr. Paul Thompson, you and I talked yesterday about what can happen after charging hard up a hill and then beginning to charge hard down a hill.
Yeah, there are some tough hills remaining. They don't look tough when you look at the overview of the course, but that little stretch that goes over Route 90, that goes over the Mass Pike, comes at a very tough time. It takes a lot out of you.
Paul, why is fatigue a mental problem, not a physical problem?
Well, what happens when you get bone weary is that you actually lose your concentration and you begin to slip away a little bit. And when you start to slip away mentally, you can drop off your pace. You really have to focus in on how quickly you're turning over your feet. Make sure that you're not taking the long way around a corner, for example. Starting to drift away mentally, you start to lose it speed-wise.
We talked about pacing being so important at the start. It's also important at the end of the race. Now, Bob Varsha was talking about the spiritual will to win of Seko. Can he will himself through the wall over the final few miles?
No, you really can't will yourself through that physiologic breakdown when you run out of muscle glycogen. But Seko has done it right. The smartest way to run a marathon is to run the early part easy and then to charge on in the last 13 miles, especially the last 6 miles or so. What you do is you save your energy early on. You see, if you run too fast, you have to use muscle glycogen. You burn up muscle glycogen when you're running fast. So by running slow, you can use fats and other energy sources, and then you have glycogen ready for the sprint at the end.
Are there little mental games that you can play with yourself to say, I don't really ache as much as my body is telling me I do?
Yes, you have to talk to yourself during this point. You have to talk to yourself about how well you're feeling and how close you are. And some people after 13 miles think of every mile going by as being 2 miles. In other words, they mentally don't count the first 13 miles. But you have to work out little games to talk yourself through this last stretch. You can see him gritting his teeth there. He's really forcing himself. He's paying attention.
Seko's best time in a marathon, 2:08.27. And George, you've been doing some calculations. What do you project?
I have, Jim. We've got him going from 22 to 23 miles in 4:47 pace. So Seko is just rolling now. This is sensational running.
About 7 or 8 minutes to the finish. It's been 24 miles. He's got 2 miles, 385 yards left to go. We'll come back for the windup of this record-setting, perhaps, Boston Marathon in a moment.
The clock on the pace car at the 91st Boston Marathon reads just over 2 hours, and that car separates Japan's Toshihiko Seko from the rest of the field, Larry.
Bob, that time also tells us that there's less than 2 miles to go. Look down the race course. There you see it over the shoulder. There's the runners trying to chase and track down Seko. Look at the mile splits. Since mile 18 to 19, he has been clicking off the miles at under 4 minutes 53 seconds per mile. Some as fast as 4 minutes 48 or 49 seconds per mile Seko has. He is coming right down now the streets, which are lined with people, and also up in the apartment buildings. Parties are going along all down the race course here as people just hang out the windows, much like they do on First Avenue in New York. Seko, the essence of the Japanese as far as discipline goes, propriety, and what's expected of him, for his people, and for himself. He is an I can't overuse the word, disciplined individual. He has gone away for stretches as much as 3 months to train in virtual seclusion and put in up to 25 and 30-mile runs to prepare for moments just like this. We had reports that Jeff Smith was in second place along with Steve Jones, just a second apart as they trailed by about 150 yards, Bob.
And John Tracy apparently right in the middle of that battle as well.
We had a report that he slipped back in the last half mile.
Okay, John Tracy slips back a little bit. That'll be a source of some disappointment to the Boston fans. But this man is the object.
Straight shot down into Kenmore Square from there.
You saw Toshihiko Seko look a little bit to the left and to the right. He's not used to seeing crowds like this, I don't think, and it's a very foreign crowd. The crowds in Japan,
I've got a split on Seko as he went from 23 to 24 in 4:49, so he's holding on. And, of course, the crowds are with him now, and that's very exciting for a runner. He can't even see the second-place runner. He's looked behind him 2, 3, 4 times in the last couple of miles. He looks just terrific to me.
Well, the first thing any young runner learns is that if you are out in front and maintaining pace, that means the guy behind you has to run faster just to catch you. And right now, at least 100 yards separates Seko from Jeff Smith.
Bob, there's something else that he'll start doing. When he goes around a corner, for example, on Hereford Street, he'll put in a surge. And the idea is to break the people behind you mentally. When they lose sight of you for a minute, you got to put some distance between you and them.
And here is a look at our other leader. Rosa Mota of Portugal continues to head up the women's ranks. About 1,000 women are members of this 6,300 roughly people in the registered field for the Boston Marathon, maybe 10,000 total. We'll try to update Rosa Mota's splits to this point, but Rosa Mota of Portugal is obviously still leading the women's race.
She is running at approximately a 225 or 226 mile pace, Bob. We have her past 22 miles. I just got this statistic. 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 12 seconds.
At one point in her career, Rosa Mota ran 6 straight marathons and improved in each one. She's not going to improve today as Toshihiko Seko takes a look back once again, and that I'm a little bit surprised at. There is Rosa Mota, however. Her best, 2:23.29. She will not threaten that today, but she will, at this point, take the Boston Marathon Women's Championship, and with it a surprising cash purse of some $71,000. Well, I say cash purse, that's not quite accurate. $40,000 in cash, a $31,000 automobile, and that's a pretty good day's work all around. There is your leader, Toshihiko Seko. He has got the official vehicles around him. That separates him from the rest of the field. Dr. Paul Thompson a moment ago mentioned that if they can't see you, that works on the minds of the athletes that are trying to run you down. Right now, the official vehicles separate Seko from the rest of the field.
Last report we had, Steve Jones in second, Jeff Smith in third. John Tracy had slipped back into 6th place. Bruce Bickford was in 14th place. Dee Costello was also having trouble. He was in 12th place. As we approach down the final long straightaway, the last 4 miles heading directly into Boston. The women's race has been all Mota. Last reports we had, Ria van Landingham and Agnes Pardens, both from Belgium, were running second and third, comfortably ensconced in those positions, and really running the races of their lives. Ebby Palm was up there, but that was back about 5 miles ago. She's a 44-year-old Swedish woman who ran 2 hours and 34 minutes for the marathon last year, here to finish in the top 5. Listen to the roar for Seko.
Bob and Larry, Seko ran a 5:03 as he came from 24 into the 25th mile. That's a little bit of slowing from those 4:49s he's been running. He looks very strong to me, but it might be an indicator, perhaps, that Steve Jones still could make a final run at him. We're just going to have to keep watching.
It's going to take a tremendous effort from Steve Jones. He has moved from third into second, as Larry mentioned just a moment ago. But at 2 hours and 7 minutes, it is still Toshihiko Seko in charge as we approach the turn onto Hereford Street, another turn onto Boylston, and the long straightaway stretch to the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Now, there is a tremendous battle going on in second place. Jeff Smith is just approaching, and there he is. He is catching Steve Jones for second. What a battle after 25 miles of steady running between these two countrymen. From the United Kingdom, Jeff Smith and Steve Jones.
Smith, a former fireman from Great Britain, a graduate of Providence College. Wales is the home. A baby town called Iberville is where Steve Jones grew up. Now an Air Force mechanic for the Royal Air Force. This man, representing a great deal of the country the size of California, Japan, over here, he is a national treasure. Not a hero, a treasure in Japan.
We are already past the existing course record set by Rob Costello last year, but we were 3.5 minutes approximately behind that pace, so Toshihiko Seko is probably getting within 3 minutes of the finish line.
Everybody at home, watch and focus on his face. Watch the grit, watch the attention, watch the discipline and focus. Dave Gordon up in the lead right there. I'm not sure, and I may be wrong, I'm sorry, but I think that might be Hideki Kita, his countryman.
The other Japanese, I agree.
I'm guessing in that. I'm sorry, I couldn't even see his bib number there.
And that will be a cause for celebration. I was about to say, I hope we're not going to see Toshihiko Seko doing an awful lot of looking around, but he did look back. I think Dr. Thompson and George Hirsch, who were right on the money. Seko is running the race of his life. He knows he's not home free yet.
Well, we've got Jones in second place, almost 1 full minute at mile 25 astern of Seko. And he was even with Jeff Smith. The time, 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 29 seconds with 1.25 miles to go. So they will run at the rate they're going, virtually reverse splits despite the Newton Hills. There is Seko, and he's got about 350 yards on second and third place right now.
He's opened about a minute, Larry. And before this race, Greg Meyer said there may be a lot of money involved, but when you get this good a field, what we're talking about is world bragging rights. And I think that's true, because off this race, which is the finest field in the world this year, Toshihiko Seko can claim to be the #1 marathoner right now. And he's looking back, he's very confident. He's got about 1 minute now. He's been opening on Smith and Jones, who are vying for second and third.
And of course, he's only lost one marathon. That was in the Olympics in '84, since he lost and came in second here in Boston way back in 1979 to Bill Rogers.
George, to give our viewers and Jim an idea of what we're talking about as they head down the straightaway, last year among the top 8 marathoners in the world, only 2 of them faced each other. And here we have the number 1, 2, and 4 in the world last year, plus the Olympic silver medalist, and plus Seko, all coming in to face each other here in Boston. It's really a race that is rarely ever run these days with so many quality marathons to choose from.
Larry
Seko
and Bob, you see Seko when he kept turning around and looking behind him just to double check, and I think maybe what was happening with a tremendous battle going on for second and third and the applause of the crowd 8 and 10 deep along the road, maybe the applause started to confuse him a little bit.
Hey, Jimmy, I tell you what,
I think that's a
for
good
$71,000, I'd turn around and check too.
If we could widen that shot out, we might be able to see when his pursuers turn the corner behind him. There, watch for the guys to come around the corner next. The important thing, I think, also on top of everything else in this race, is that in that big race that you talked about, Larry, with all the big stars there, so we didn't run the record. As you see, second and third and fourth place pull around the corner behind. Toshihiko Seko will come out of this race and say, okay, guys, we all put it on the line. I showed that as the Olympic season truly opens, with a year or so to go, I know how to analyze a race. It's not always to the swiftest. It is often to the smartest and the strongest and the runner who makes the right move at the right time. And as things stand right now, Toshihiko Seko has analyzed the 1987 Boston Marathon perfectly. He has executed his race plan, and it is paying off big time. Listen to the crowd as Toshihiko Seko claims his crown.
We have 50 meters to go.
Two hours, 11 minutes, 48 seconds unofficially. Toshihiko Seko has won his second Boston Marathon. Now let's watch for the battle for second and third place. There it is, Steve Jones in the intramural battle between a Welshman and an Englishman. Steve Jones looking back.
Smith has conceded it.
See the cheeks puffing. Jeff Smith has given it everything he's got. As Toshihiko Seko claims the prize, Steve Jones makes his way in.
Smith's a happy man. A good race. He takes third. Steve Jones takes second. A fine performance. It'll rank well worldwide. Jeff Smith is back, and I'm sure he feels good beating many world-class competitors.
A $20,000 effort by Steve Jones, a $5,000 sprint to the finish, because that's the difference between second and Jeff Smith in third. Here is Rosa Mota, 2:12:58, approaching 2 hours, 13 minutes into the race. She continues to lead. She has yet to make the turn onto Hereford Street. There goes the 24-mile mark. We'll be back to watch Rosa Mota finish after this. Two hours, 14 minutes, 30 seconds into the Boston Marathon. There is your women's leader, Rosa Mota. Toshihiko Seko is already home with his garland in an unofficial time of 2 hours, 11 minutes, 48 seconds. Now the crowd's attention will turn to this woman, Rosa Mota from Portugal.
Portugal is taking this feed. They'll be seeing this show on a delayed basis, but she has less than 2 miles to go to try and claim her crown here, her first time ever running the Boston Marathon. 99 pounds, has never looked more powerful on a starting line. 5'1", that's what she weighs, and that's her strength. 1982, the first year she ever ran a marathon, she ran 2 hours, 36 minutes, a 6-minute mile pace, the first time she ever tackled a difficult course in hot weather conditions, and she became a European champion. She lives in a small town of Oporto, which is just up the coast from Lisbon, and it's right on the coastline where she trains along the beach.
Toshihiko Seko, as I said, is in the interview area. Alan Massingale is making his way to Seko now, and we'll be chatting with the winner of the 1987 marathon, Toshihiko Seko, in just a moment. All right, we have word that Seko is there, that Alan Massingale is there. Let's go down to the finish area now to Alan Massingale with the winner, Toshihiko Seko.
We are here with Toshihiko Seko, who ran a brilliant race today, and our interpreter is Chika, and she will be asking the questions for us. First of all, his reaction to winning the 1987 Boston Marathon.
expressing thank you to all of the people who supported him.
How did he run this race? What was his attitude today?
本日のマラソンに関しましての戦略はどうでしたでしょうか。
記録を狙いたかったんですけども、逆風でですね、ちょっとペースが遅れて勝負に切り替えました。
He was very much anxious to establish a new record, but because of the wind against him coming towards him, he was not able to establish a new record.
With such an elite field today, Chica, could you ask him, please, what was his strategy, knowing that there were so many fine runners out there?
本日マラソンに参加なさいました方たちはいわゆるリードランナーだったんですけれども、その方たちと一緒に走られまして、どういうふうな戦略をお持ちになりましたか。
とにかくもう勝つも負けるもなくて、もうやるだけのことをやったと、勝っても負けても悔いはないという感じで今日は走ろうと思いました。
He had given all his best, so he doesn't, whether he was going to win or not for the first place or second place, it didn't mean too much. All he wanted was to do the best.
Okay, Chica, finally, there's a very slow time at the start, and it continued throughout the slow time throughout the race, especially at the start. How did that affect him?
出だしから全般非常にスローだったと思うんですけれども、その点に関しましてどうお考えでしょうか。それともまた後半からピッチを上げる予定は終わりになりましたでしょうか。
こういういいランナーが揃うとですね、いいランナーが揃うといいペースか遅いペースかどちらかなんです。だから今回はもう風が強くてですね、誰も前へ行けませんでした。ですからペースも遅れてなりましたけども、でも勝てましたから、最後の
Bill Rogers.
It's usually when he runs with all these top runners, so-called star runners and top runners, it is very challenging. But because of the wind situation, he believes that the rest of the people are feeling the same way.
Once again, Chica, thank him very much, and congratulations on a brilliant race today and a wonderful victory in your third attempt here at the Boston Marathon, winning once again. Okay, let's go back upstairs for more race coverage as more races begin to come in.
Well, we just had a tremendously emotional moment here in this Boston Marathon. It was certainly the hometown favorite, George Hirsch, coming in with a very strong kick. Bill Rogers, a four-time winner. As you look at Rosa, who is, of course, out there so very, very strong, Rosa Mota. But we were talking about Bill Rogers, and there it is, the four-time winner of the Boston Marathon. A very popular man here in Beantown. They were on their feet. They were leaning out of office buildings.
Well, it's pretty thrilling when Bill comes down the final few hundred yards here. He ran it in 2:18, and that's exceedingly good today. If you noticed ahead of him, one place up in 2:17 was John Tracy, who going into this race was certainly at least a co-favorite with Seko. So Bill had a beautiful race. I think the headwind, which Seko mentioned in that interview, was a bigger factor than we realized sitting here at the finish line.
George, I tend to agree with you. I don't think we appreciated the degree of the headwind sitting here in downtown Boston, but that might have been a factor. Otherwise, it was just a technical race. That's also a possibility.
Certainly an emotional race for this lady out of Portugal. It's her very first Boston Marathon. She said before the race that she felt a little bit nervous because everybody was saying that it was a one-woman race as far as the ladies division. She was bothered by an Achilles tendon problem last year. That has healed and feels good, and the legs were not a problem. And of course, she was really never threatened, Paul.
No, she never really was threatened. You know, it's amazing how many of these top athletes have an injury at some time, and that's simply because they're putting in so many miles day in and day out. 100 miles a week is an average for a quality distance runner this day. That leads to injuries.
So as the young lady out of Portugal, Rosa Mota, has her final kick and comes closer to Boylston and Exeter, we'll take a timeout and be right back. Joined us late. Where have you been? It's been the premier marathon field of the 80s, an outstanding international field. 1, 2, 3 in the men's division. Seko from Japan, Jones from Wales, and Smith from Great Britain. And right now, a Portuguese lady, 5 feet 1 inch and 99 pounds, power pack. George and Larry.
Yeah, she's in the last mile now, and I just think the whole Rosa Mota show has been exciting today. Look at her. she's beginning to throw in some real arm motion. I think Rosa's pushing this pace. She wants to get as fast a time as she possibly can. There's nothing behind her that says she's got to run like this, but she's enjoying it.
George, when you get to this stretch of Boston, it's hard not to put everything into it. The crowds are just so enthusiastic cheering you on.
They do give you a great lift, Paul, as we all know, and they keep out there for the next couple of hours. That's what's so exciting about the Boston Marathon.
Jimmy, this young lady right now, she's turning on to Hereford Street. She has less than 700 yards to go. Began her running at the age of 14, and at 21, there was some question whether she was washed up. She came under the guidance of Joseph Pedrosa, who's her companion and helps her train, and spent 5 months taking her away from competition, restructuring her training, and she's done exceedingly well since the age of 21, now 28 years young, and about to become the victor in Boston. She has won major marathons all over the world. We've mentioned the fact that she's the bronze medalist from 1984 at the Olympic Games, and her pace has been averaging for the last couple of miles 5 minutes and 36 seconds as she has controlled this race since the 6-mile mark.
And there's a reason that it's important for Rosa Mota to do well. As George Hirsch mentioned, that she was throwing in a lot of arm motion. She is not the only fine female runner in Portugal. As we said earlier, this opens the Olympic season, does this Boston Marathon, and a lot of countries don't go with a system of selecting athletes based on their head-to-head performance, such as the U.S. Olympic trials. She has to do well in order to retain her standing as Portugal's leading female marathoner. We have a report that in second place is Ria van Landingham of Belgium, but she is about 4 minutes behind this young lady. Agnes Padney, also of Belgium, is running in third place at this point. But Rosa Mota, who has been running with that long-limbed fella next to her virtually since the halfway mark, and she is apparently going to be the women's winner in this year's Boston Marathon.
To show everybody how good she is, she's run 10,000 meters in 31 minutes and 19 seconds, and she trains up to 110 miles a week. She came over from Portugal for this race and will go on to her second home in Boulder, Colorado, where Rob DiCostello resides also. About 4 months of the year, she and DiCostello spend time in that mountain air, I should say, at 5,000 feet to get the benefits of high-altitude training.
Larry,
she has just a few yards to go. Go ahead, Paul.
Larry, you made a point on a couple of the runners, and that is the fact that, like Rosa Mota, took some time off from competition. One of the things that really typifies people before they go into their very productive competitive seasons is getting away from the competition. One of the problems with the money that has entered marathoning is that it draws you to run too many races, so that some of these athletes finish tired.
Here is Rosa Mota. Our congratulations to her winning the Boston Marathon Women's Division.
There you see the special finish line set up particularly for the women. And at roughly 2 hours, 25 minutes, and 20 seconds, Rosa Mota has won the 87 Boston Marathon. And look at the smile.
While we have a second, not only a tip of the hat to Rosa Mota, we didn't get a chance to talk about Nike's Athletics West athlete Dave Gordon, who finished 4th today, running a conservative race in the beginning, and then Colombia's Domingo Tibidueza, who at one time had all of the South American records from the mile to the marathon, who is coaching at the University of Nevada's collegiate system, takes 5th place. And it was Jeff
there
Smith
she is,
third.
about to be done with that laurel wreath. She'll wear that wreath to a press conference at a nearby hotel in just a little while. That's the same hotel where she'll be a bridesmaid on Tuesday for a wedding of marathoner Arturo Barrios and part-time marathoner, jogger, and nurse Joy Rochester. There she is, power-packed out of Portugal, 28 years of age, a bronze medal winner in the LA Olympics in '84, Rosa Mota. Very emotional and proud moment. As we pointed out, George, it's her very first Boston Marathon.
She sure doesn't look like she went through an awful lot of toil either. I think she just looks absolutely fabulous. Look at her.
She's got a little spring in her step and breaks into a little victory jog. She's ready for a victory lap.
She really is.
And speaking of victories, there are 2 other victories to be commemorated here this afternoon. The men's and ladies wheelchair division. Alan Massengale has both winners.
The wheelchair winners, Candace Cable-Brooks of California, Andre Vigier of Canada, 2 legends and wheelchair athletes. First of all, Andre Vigier, this is your 3rd time. Congratulations. 3 times. And how was it out there today? The conditions of Mota looking very resplendent, and your laurel wreath and your roses feeling very good. This has to be your finest moment in your career.
Yes, of course, because I win the marathon, and it's a big race in the world, and I am happy.
Let's talk about when you came in today. You knew that this was your race to win or lose. How did that affect your attitude coming in?
It's 26 miles to run. You can lose, you can win. I try to run as fast as I can, and I win. I am happy.
From a pride standpoint, you have to feel like you have established your name certainly in the limelight among the world's top lady runners.
Yes, I feel good.
You look good. What was your particular strategy out there? Any problems at all during the race, knowing that you were all alone out front?
No, I start slow, and I feel good. I run a little bit fast, a little bit faster. And after the 30K, I try to run fast.
Some of the runners mentioned the headwind. That was a big factor. Did that concern you, that you may slow you down, take too much out of you to begin with?
Yes, because I think I am small, and the wind, front wind, kill me. I don't like front wind.
Okay, this is Rosa Mota at the finish line, feeling very good about her Boston Marathon victory. Let's go back upstairs for more race coverage, and we'll be back to talk some more in just a moment.
Still plenty of kick left at the finish line, and a big, broad smile for 28-year-old Rosa Mota out of Portugal. Again, the bronze medal winner in the '84 Olympics. 5'1" and 3/4 inches, 99 pounds as the finishers here at Boston. And this is a scene and an emotion that will continue, George Hurst, for hours as you look at the official men's results. Seko from Japan, Jones from Great Britain, Jeff Smith also from Great Britain.
First American was Dave Gordon, and there was a lot of bidding for who would be the first American. We heard the names Bickford and Eyestone and Bill Rogers, but it was Dave Gordon, not one of the names we spent a lot of time talking about beforehand. And maybe we should have. I remember one early warm morning in Honolulu when he came out and won the Honolulu Marathon before we really knew much about him. And I think he's emerged now as a major American.
He's an All-American at the University of Montana. This is his 3rd Boston Marathon. And there are the ladies' results once again. We talked about the elite international field. Indeed. Lots more coming up from the 91st running of the Boston Marathon.
It was Agnes Bartens who finished 2nd out there, and you knew that there was going to be a chase all day long, trying to catch up with Rosa all day long. What was your attitude coming in, trying to prove that you could keep with her?
I don't understand. Speaking to...
Okay, what I want to ask you is your attitude coming into the race today, knowing that Rosa was so strong.
Yes, I know it, but I'm here just for running a good time, and I got it now.
So you're happy about that, just running the good time?
Yes, and I'm happy to that I've been 2nd.
Talk about the field out there today, the conditions for the race today. How did it affect you, the ladies on the course?
Very, very good. Yes.
Very cool conditions and a very good finish for Agnes Bartens. She's very happy just to make a name for herself in the 1987 Boston Marathon, finishing